Good evening, everyone. I'm Carol Olson Day of the New York Times, and I'm delighted to welcome you to this exciting Times Talks. We're live here in New York at the Times Center, and we're live around the world on the web. Tonight's guest is a remarkable film actor, screenwriter, and director. We're delighted to have him on our stage. His profession has awarded him its highest accolades, including 2 BAFTA awards and a Primetime Emmy nomination. Just last night, he was honored for his work throughout his career by the Gotham Independent Film Awards here in New York City. In his current film, Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, based on the novel by John le Carré, he stars as the Cold War spy George Smiley. The movie, which has already had great success and critical acclaim in the UK, opens here on December 9th. You'll hear much more about him, his career, and his new film from our moderator. A reporter on the culture desk of the New York Times, he's the lead contributor to the must-read arts blog on nytimes.com. He's also the author of Lads and the unsparingly honest memoir, Cocaine Sun, which was a New York Times editor's choice last January. For Times Talks, he's interviewed such diverse guests as Russell Brand, James McAvoy, and Michelle Williams. And really exciting news, he just sold a book that he's working on now based on the film Network, which was written by Patty Chayefsky and directed by Sidney Lumet. So please join me in welcoming Dave Itzkoff and our very special guest, Gary Oldman.
Gary, as somebody with a deep admiration for your body of work and the characters you've portrayed, I want to say, first of all, what an honor it is to be sitting across from you this evening.
Very kind. I'm the warm-up act for Tilda Swinton.
What I want to say, second of all, is please don't hurt me.
No.
You've probably heard this many times before, but you're often held up as an actor who immerses himself totally in his roles and all but disappears into his characters. Is that a fair assessment, and does that accurately describe what you're trying to do?
No. No, you give the art, I guess, is that you give the illusion that you become these people. I don't think you can. If an actor says that they become the people where they lose themselves, then I would question that. You know, but especially the roles that I've played. I mean, I'd be in an institution. I mean, can you imagine going home with Drexel? And maybe some of you can. Yeah.
When we talk broadly about the many characters that you've portrayed, I mean, is there any sort of connective tissue among them? Anything that in any way unites them, other than the fact that you've portrayed them?
Well, I mean, each character you play is each project that you work on, it sets up new hurdles that you have to jump over. Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy is a very unique experience to Dracula or JFK, and they demand different things from you. I suppose there's yes, you could say there was a theme connecting some of them, and also you get into a thing where you're typecast, and that happens. I mean, it's happened to me, and it happens to other actors, and you have to kind of they see you in something. You're at the mercy of the industry and the imagination of the people that are casting you. So you can pick and choose. You can pick and choose to an extent, but obviously you don't get offered every role. And then there's the usual sort of 5, 6, 7 suspects, up for the same, all clamoring for the same part. But I've had that there's a connection there. I think that I've played a few bad guys.
One or two, I think.
One or two.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's the ones people remember.
Right. When you were younger, and I mean, you hadn't yet had a chance to really kind of, stretch out in some of those roles. I mean, did you already sense something in yourself that you felt that you had a kind of versatility?
I must say, I've been at the mercy of what has come in. There have been a few roles that I've wanted, but it's really just what has come in through the letterbox, and what appeals to me, right. And if I can do something with it. I mean, I'll give you an example. When I read the script of Dracula, I wanted to say, I loved the line, "I've crossed oceans of time to find you." And I thought it was worth doing the movie to say that. I thought, I want to say that to someone. I didn't know it was going to be Winona Ryder at the time, but I thought, oh God, anyone give their arm to say something like that to someone, and I saw the character, I heard the voice, it was immediate. I think I auditioned for the role. I think my screen test, really, if you could see the screen test and then you saw what I finally arrived at, the gap between would be very small.
Right. Wow.
And then there's other roles like Smiley, where initially you're working through first fear. You hope that the cloak of inspiration, I call it the cloak of inspiration, you hope that it falls. You hope that you're going to find a character. And sometimes you find them early, and sometimes you find them late, and sometimes you don't find it doesn't fall at all.
Right. I'm sure a lot of people must find it hugely comforting that even Gary Oldman is occasionally afraid of things. That's
terrified.
Really?
Yeah. You go through that. Yeah. I still have the voices in my head saying, "Oh, you're no good."
Who says that? How dare they?
These voices. But yeah, you get insecure. You feel that you get offered Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, and you think, well, I'm playing George Smiley, and they all know what they're doing, and I'm the only one who can really kind of pick it up. Yeah.
Well, speaking of Oceans of Time, you were just given a Lifetime Achievement Award last night by the Gotham Independent.
Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. And I'm only 36.
Yeah. I mean, you must get asked about Sid and Nancy so often, but was that really the film that made everything happen for you? Did that sort of unlock the key for you, unlock the lock?
Well, yeah.
Career-wise.
Yeah, in the movies, yeah, because I was doing a play when the producers saw me, and I'd been doing theatre for 5-6 years, doing theatre before I did Sid and Nancy, and then it was just fortunate. I mean, there was no way that I engineered the Sid and Nancy and Prick Up Your Ears back to back.
Right.
So that was just a lucky thing that it happened like that. So as a young actor, talk about sort of to show versatility. You know, it wasn't something I was looking for, so they just kind of happened,
Right.
and that made a noise.
Right.
I can't watch Sid and Nancy. It's
Because it's just going too many years back, or
yeah, it's old work.
Yeah.
It just feels like old work, and it was a curtain raiser. I see it as a front cloth act,
Right.
kind of before the curtain came up and it started.
Right.
And I'm very hard on myself.
I've
So
noticed, yeah.
So I'll. I mean, there's just some of Sid and Nancy. I want to stomp into the ground. You know.
Well, just speaking broadly then about, you know, I mean, right off the bat, you've gotten a couple, you know, you start with a couple of historical roles, people who, of course, existed in real life. Was it your goal to try to research these people as much as possible to really portray them as they were or might have been, or was it just, you know, let me play them as, you know, they're just characters on a page?
I think, you know, you have. I think well, first of all, you have an obligation to the character that you like, and even if they're nasty people like Drexel, you know, you have to find something that you like about them. Otherwise, you won't like them. You know. But the thing with the historical, you know, it's funny in careers. I didn't want to do Beethoven, because I had played Sid Vicious, I had played Joe Alton and Lee Harvey Oswald, and I was like the bio kid. I mean, you know what I mean? I said, I can't, you know, but so I said no, and it went away, and then it came back, and I said no, and then they cast someone else, and then they went to Tony Hopkins, and he didn't want to do it. Or he was in for a bit, and then it was a year later, and then it sort of washed up on the shore again. And I met the director, and finally he persuaded me. He persuaded me to do it. And you know, a true romance. I met Tony Scott at the Four Seasons Hotel in California. He said, "Look, I can't tell you the story." He said, "I'm no good at that." He said, "Look, he's a white guy who thinks he's black, and he's a pimp." And I said, "I'll do it." Unread.
Right.
Yeah.
Didn't even need to know who that Quentin Tarantino fellow was who wrote the script.
Yeah, he said it's Quentin Tarantino. I knew Tony Scott, you know, and he said it was this guy, and he said, "What do you say?" And I said, "Oh, I'm in," and we shook hands, and that was it. And I thought, you know, that sounds good, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You know. You asked me about famous people. Obligation to, I think, first to the character, and then with the case of Alton and Vicious, you know, you had family members that were still alive,
Right.
and I think out of respect, you know, you have an obligation to them,
Right.
because you are portraying someone's son or their brother.
Yeah.
I mean, Beethoven is. I mean, I didn't work hugely outside of the script. It was a very particular vision,
Right.
that Bernard had, and you have to get on board. You know, you can't do JFK and be on a set and say to Oliver Stone, you know, Oswald did it. It's just not going to. That's a relationship that is not going to work.
But in that film in particular, I mean, you're called upon to really bring to life, you know, historical moments that are seared in people's memories.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's footage of him, you know, coming in and out of these rooms, or of course, you know, being shot by Ruby. I mean, is there room for an actor to play those scenes in any way, or is it really about fidelity to, you know, how we saw it originally?
Yeah, how you saw it, I think. Yeah, I mean, I spent hours and hours and hours looking at that footage. I wanted to get every little flick of the eye. I wanted to get the voice. I wanted to, yeah. I'm obsessive like that.
Yeah.
I can be. Yeah. It shows probably, doesn't it?
In a good way. In a good way.
In a good way.
Yeah. You know, some of the early roles that followed. I mean, there were some of your defining roles, whether it was Bexy in The Firm or Jackie in State of Grace. We're already sort of seeing the tough guys and dare I say the psychopaths.
You can say that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, were you already starting to feel like the industry is putting me on a certain trajectory? They're seeing me in a certain way.
Yeah, but I was happy to. Happy to really go along with it. I mean, I'm a working class kid from London, and I'm in New York making a movie with Sean Penn and Ed Harris. Young John Riley was in that.
Yeah.
Robin Wright before she was Robin Wright Penn. Well, she's not that anymore, is she? But so you're there in New York playing a Westie with a terrific script, a great young director, talented young director Phil Joanna, and with Ed and Sean. I mean, come on, you're. Yeah. I'm there. Yeah, it's exciting. They were great days. There's an example. I couldn't get Jackie Flannery. I couldn't find him, and I had a sort of accent that I was doing, which was sort of this Irish Westie accent. So and it was always going up like that, but that's all it was. That's all it wasn't sitting. It wasn't. They have to sit inside you. And it just felt like I was just doing this voice, and it was all over the place. I was waiting for the cloak to fall. And at the 11th hour, I went to a costume fitting. I had long hair, and I put on a leather jacket, and I looked in the mirror, and I flicked my hair, but I didn't flick it down. I sort of flicked it up, and it was that, and I went, that feels good, and I got him.
Right, just that little bit triggered it for
and
you.
he came in.
Right.
It's amazing how you. I was talking to Tony Hopkins. He was in a David Hare play, Pravda, at the National Theatre. This was in 1990, I think it was. And you knew you were in the presence of one of the greatest performances of the 20th century. It was mind-boggling how good he was. It was dazzling. And I later got to work with him. And he had a very particular way of working, moving. May I stand?
Please.
And he was on the stage, and he would never, his feet would stay where they were, but he would like talk to people and listen like this. And he would like move like this. And it was just like, but always from this sort of thing here. And I remarked about it. I loved the physicality of it. And I remarked to him, I said, that physicality that you had where you were, I said, how did you come up with that? And he was at a technical rehearsal in the Olivier Theatre, and David Hare, they'd stopped the play, the run, for lighting or tweaks or whatever they were fixing. And he was standing on the stage of the Olivier, and David Hare asked him a question from the back of the auditorium, and Tony couldn't hear him. So he went like that. He said, "What was that?" And he went, "Oh, that feels good."
Right.
And that's where you need the intuition. You need to know that that's happening.
Right.
And that's the thing that you can't teach.
Right.
You can go to as many acting classes as you want or study, but it's that sets you apart. It's that observation that makes him Tony Hopkins.
Right. But you had, what gives you the, let's say, the confidence, I mean, some of those earlier characters that had, such high energy, high volume.
Youth.
Right. I mean, to pronounce the word everyone in the professional, and you decide you're going to take, 10 seconds to pronounce that word at maximum volume.
It was a joke.
Right.
To make Luke, the director, laugh, and I said to the sound guy, I'm going to go really loud with this one. I said, I'm just going to, I said, so be careful with your ears. And then I just turned and went, everyone, like that. And Luke went, I love you, it's in the movie. Right. But that's how things happen sometimes.
Right. Is that more of a, a young man's game, I guess, to play those psychopathic characters, or however you want to, define them? I mean, is that, you have to learn to sort of appreciate characters that require more patience or
yeah, I mean, obviously Smiley comes into that, that he's in that, in that neighborhood. Plus the fact you become, acting is like a sort of, it's like a chain. There were actors ahead of me, a generation ahead of me, 2 generations ahead of me who I would look up to and admire. And then there's people of my own generation, and it's just like a chain. We're just all passing through, and now I look back at the people like Benedict Cumberbatch and Tom Hardy and Michael Fassbender, and you look at these guys, Ryan Gosling. I love Matt Damon.
Yeah.
I'm a fan, and you watch these people now coming up and coming through, and you become, just by the being around and living a life, you become more of the sort of the elder statesman, and you realise how old you are when. No, I'm not talking about. But you do when Tom Hardy comes on the set and says, "Oh man, guys, great working with you. I used to watch you when I was a kid." You.
Right. Were there people that you looked up to like that as you were making your way? That people that I maybe not I want to emulate that person, but that person is doing what I'd like to be. That's where I see myself.
Well, I'm a huge. I mean, there were the British guys, Tom Courtenay, Albert Finney, Alan Bates, Malcolm McDowell, Alan Bates, and then of course, for my money, and there were George C. Scott, I mean, and then James Stewart. I'm a big Charlie Chaplin fan. Cary Grant, many, but I loved Al Pacino. I think pound for pound, he's one of the greatest living American actors. I just think he's...
And not a lot of pounds there either.
And not a lot of pounds, yeah.
But was it hard for you to? I mean, just again in the earliest days. I mean, just to even to get the training to get the chops, or I mean, were you able?
Well, I trained. I went to drama school, so I did all of that.
Right.
Voice and music and fencing and mime, yes, and dance and just. But it was all geared to. It was all. Your goal was the theatre. And the stage,
right.
and those other guys sort of made movies. So I just sort of, I just stumbled in. I was a young actor, a kid, and they said, do you want to play Sid Vicious?
Right. And had that not, if that opportunity had not come along, I mean, you could have just as easily had a 30, 35-year stage career that would have satisfied you.
Yeah. I think, yeah. I mean, that's, yeah. I mean, I've directed, and that was acting's, it's not quite the same after you've directed.
What did you learn from that?
I just love the fact that that you were constantly engaged. It's busy work, and I love that. That was a thrilling experience, and I love actors, and I like good acting. It's nice to watch it, and I get a great deal of satisfaction from that. I like going and seeing people and thinking, like, how'd they do that? I couldn't do that. I love that.
We were talking, about some of your, earliest iconic roles, and we talked even a little bit before about Dracula, but we forget that you got to play him, as the medieval warrior, the debonair Victorian, because those scenes that where he's the sort of decrepit spinster or whatever it is, those are the ones that have really kind of become iconic. I mean, did you know that there would be all of those facets to that character when you sign on for a project?
Yeah, I had an idea. Yeah, we had 4 weeks rehearsal with Coppola. We used to call it Camp Coppola up in the Napa Valley. So we went up there, and he got us all there and then locked the gate. And we drank all his wine. And he cooked many, many, many dinners. But we did weeks of improvisation. And we read the book out loud. That was the hardest thing.
And
that's a hard book to read out loud. Yeah.
You get to sort of try on all the different facets of the character in a process like that.
Well, it's hard, I once said to him, he sent people out for horse riding, and they were learning sort of the etiquette of the sort of manners of the period. I think the boys were kind of going up, and they went. Carrie Elwes was, up in a balloon. He was ballooning, and I said, well, I'm 300 years old and I'm dead. What do I do? So you got to kind of make it up, Use your imagination.
Right.
As I say to my kids, you like SpongeBob? Anyone ever? Yeah, SpongeBob. What? Yeah. Imagine. Yeah. So I say to my kids, come on, turn the video games off. What do we use?
Our imagination.
I didn't realize that we'd be talking about SpongeBob in this conversation.
It's a great character.
Oh, I would have prepared more on it. I didn't realize.
Yeah.
I didn't know that was.
It's a little love of mine.
Yeah.
Oh, come on, Sandy.
There are characters that you've played, not only Dracula, but Mason Verger in Hannibal, where there's so many layers of prosthetic and makeup on top of you. I mean, can you feel that you can still be an actor?
Oh yeah, it was the most liberating experience. It was the most free I've ever felt, really, on a set, and I was in a wheelchair with sort of one eye and a hand that moved this wheelchair, you know what I mean? And so I couldn't use all those other things. But Gary had totally disappeared. The shape of my ears, the whole, all of that. All that stuff we carry around with us that we don't like about ourselves sometimes, you know what I mean? I thought I made him disappear, and it was my goal to... There he was. Right. He was, and it's like like a Halloween costume. Yeah. There's a certain freedom that you get from hiding behind a mask,
right.
And that's what that.
Do people start to forget after a while that there's an actor underneath there? Do they start to think that there's really a person in a wheelchair with no face on a set? Right?
Yeah, and Julia Moore was very, very sweet to work with, but Ridley was very conscious of the fact that I'd been in makeup for 6 hours and that I was there we had a little underneath the prosthetics. We needed to achieve this thing of in the book. He has no eyelids, and that was a sort of, how do we do it? And what they did was they anchored two little dots under my eyes here, and there was this sort of fishing wire running down to a third nipple that they stuck. And then they would pull my eyelid down and anchor it off with the thing, and then under the wig there was another one for this eyelid, and then they pulled that and anchored that one down, and then we would do the take, and then the guy was there putting the drops in my eyes, and Ridley was very good with it, and if he would say, "Come on, guy, let's hurry it along. I've got someone in makeup." You don't always have someone that. Directors are funny people. Yeah. I mean, they can be. I mean, recently working with Thomas Alfredson, you know, I absolutely. He gave me Smiley. He's my hero, you know, and I adore him, and he's a lovely guy. And then there are those that can be bullies, and know you're in a makeup, and they will leave you in a makeup.
Just a kind of vengeful thing.
They just want to. It can be cruel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you get some kind of hazard pay for that role? I mean, to be. I mean, you must know you're signing on for all these other gewgaws and.
Oh, you know, this is the thing that you do with a role like that. You have to surrender to the process. I mean, you really do, and you know what you're in for, because they take a cast of your head and they experiment with these. Right. You know, you don't just get to the set and they stick a mask on you. So there's a whole preamble to getting there, right, which is extensive, with contact lenses and all of that. In a complete makeup, I think it works. I've worn makeup and it's advanced. I mean, Dracula. It was the old days, you know. It was foam rubber and the lenses were glass, right, that covered the entire scleral lenses, and now it's soft lenses, and it's that other stuff they use.
They'd probably do it all digital now anyway.
And then they add yeah.
You know, I've heard that, you know, in the preparation for Immortal Beloved, that you actually, I mean, you spent several hours a day practicing your piano. Is that
5.
True? Wow.
Yeah.
Each day.
Pretty much, yeah.
I mean,
I never wanted to see a piano again. I tell you, it was like, and I had a great guy with me who would. I said, "This is what I need to achieve." I mean, I do play, so that helped. But it's hard stuff. It's difficult stuff, Beethoven. Yeah, you know. And Bernard said, "I want to show your hands, and I'm going to shoot it wide. I'm not going to cut to hands." And then, you know, so he said, "I want to do takes all in one," and so that was. But that's fun work.
Right.
I mean, I mean, he wrote the thing to the score.
Is it the goal
that's how he directed, right, you know, almost like a score, where we'd go back and he would say, "Let's do a pickup," and then he would say, "Let's go from bar 18 to the audio guy." So he kind of wrote the movie to the music, music to the movie. You know, it was a all-encompassing thing.
Right.
And if you're on a set and you're hearing that music every day, it's a glorious thing.
Yeah. So I mean, it's not really. I mean, you're not expecting to become a virtuoso pianist by the end of this process, but you want to give the director a certain level of capability.
Well, yeah, it's the way that you find. I thought, how do you find the man? And the way for me to find the man was through. Obviously, it seemed obvious to me that you find him through the music. There's all different ways that people work. I mean, some people have to just you know, actors, they keep to themselves and they're very quiet. Some have to kind of crack jokes, and there's others that have to have an argument with the director, or you know, they have to choose someone out to get to get there. You know, it's just you've got to be able to. A director has to be able to sort of work with that. It's you know, it's benign dictatorship,
Right.
really,
Right.
but it is a dictatorship.
Right.
But they have to make the actor feel that it was their idea.
Right.
You know.
Right. I think one maybe, you know, my assumption might have been, you know, because you have so, you know, capably played people who are, you know, very intense and very high strung, that you know, maybe that would be who you actually are, and yet you seem very, you know, easygoing and very low key. So I mean, is that, again, that's just being able to summon that part of yourself, or that's just something you can turn off and on as needed?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, I'm not. I can be a little intense. I think. Yeah. And I was probably a little more hyper a bit when I was younger. But I guess you just have a sort of facility for it. It's not, you know, I think it's once you find it and you've done the work, then you can turn it on and turn it off, and turn it on and turn it off. I don't have to be in character all day. I don't have to eat my lunch as Drexel. I keep coming back to that guy, I don't know, but he's one of my favourites.
Isn't he? Isn't he just the best?
You know, and that was again. I was working on a movie called Romeo's Bleeding, and we were in New York. I think we were in Brooklyn, and I was in my trailer. We were on a break, and a bunch of guys walked past the door of the trailer on the street, just these guys on the street, and I heard this voice, and I said, "Wow, that's the sound." And I got this young kid, and I said, Can I borrow you? And he came into the trailer, and I said, "You see this script, this scene here? You tell me, read that, and you let me see what it doesn't work. What you know? How does this dialogue hold up?"
Right.
And this is Tarantino. And the kid went, and he went through the list, and he went, "Yeah, that don't fly, man. He wouldn't say that. That's breastises. He wouldn't say that. The thing." And he went through this thing, and I recorded him just talking to me for 10 minutes.
Wow.
And I had this guy in his headphones, and he changed some words in the script for me. Uh-huh. And I'd had that wig made, and I got an eye from the prop department. It was an old eye that I'd worn in Dracula. And I got to the set on the Monday morning. I drove from the desert on the Sunday night and went to the set Monday morning, and I walked onto the set, and all put together, and Tony Scott, the first time he'd seen me. And he said, "So that's the, you know, with his big cigar," I went, "Yeah, that's the wig, that's the eye, all right, lovely, okay, wait, you sit there, run the scene." And we ran the scene, and then he said, and then he'd come up with his notes, and he would just go through his notes, and he'd say, "Give me something else on that line, Gary. Give me something else. Da 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 da. All right, 20 minutes. We light it. We shoot." And then you shoot, and then he shoots with 5 cameras at a time. So he covers the hands, he covers the medium, and he shoots like that. And I had just come from a movie where the director, who was from Hungary, a lovely man, Peter Medak, and he would be like this. And he would come up to me and say, "I like your face, Gary. I want to do a close-up, darling, because I love your face, you know." And he was just this guy. And then you go from that, from the Sunday night, you go from that, and then you go to Tony Scott, you know, who's you know, when he likes a take, you know, and you do take after take, and when there's one he likes, he goes, "Bingo, first one, preach!" For those,
So you know you've done a good job.
well, when you've got a good one, Tony goes, "First one, what?" You know, and it's like he's won the World Cup.
Yeah.
When but those are you've got to adjust from, you know, Peter over here, you know, to Tony over there. So it's quite, it's you know, in the space of, you know, 12 hours.
Right.
So it's fun.
Right. Do you still have that recording that you made of the dialogue? Because I feel like that should be in the Library of Congress.
No, I don't have it anymore. These probably lost somewhere on my travels.
You know, in more recent years, you know, you've come to play very integral roles in a couple of very big film franchises, and you know, the first, of course, being Christopher Nolan's Batman movies, Batman Begins, and The Dark Knight and Dark Knight Rises. And you know, what's so interesting, you know, among other things, is that as Jim Gordon, you're sort of playing the only truly honorable man in the story. Is that a nice change of pace for you?
Well, I was saying getting older, you know, you're not. No, yes, I mean, and that was one of the, again, as I said earlier, you know, you're at the mercy of the imagination of those people that want to work with you. And my hat goes off to Chris Nolan because he didn't cast me as a bad guy. He cast me as Jim Gordon, and it was a lovely gear shift. It was like a changing down, you know? And I mean, I knew acting opposite Heath, God rest his soul, that he was doing something really special. I mean, you could feel it, you could see it, and it was palpable on the set. But I'd sit there as in my drab clothes as Jim Gordon with my big mustache. And I would think, you know, rather you than me, kid. I'd done the bouncing off the walls, and I'd sit there in admiration of his total relaxation, unpredictability, complete and utter freedom. Heath was so free as an actor. It was extraordinary, and but that's an example of just looking at someone. I look at Mr. Hardy, and I go, "You keep lifting those weights, and I'll keep lifting my water. You slow down."
Right. But is it tapping, you know, muscles that maybe you haven't gotten to flex in a long time for yourself?
It's
Acting.
it's just another. It's chords, isn't it? It's just another sound there, and
you grow that mustache, and you are Jim Gordon.
Yeah. I've just finished 2 weeks ago, so it lived under my nose for about 7 months. But you do, the thing, and the trouble with it is, of course, as a lovely story. I was at Thanksgiving, I take the kids to El Capitan. Does anyone, you know, the West Coast, near Santa Barbara, and we go to this place, and it's a tradition where we camp, and well, it's glamping really. It's not camping. They're tents, and then there are these cabins. But we go and we take the kids and all the families and different people, the friends that I've made with the mums and dads with the school. We go and someone will do the turkey, and we'll bring desserts, or we'll make desserts, and then there'll be someone's the vegetables, the potatoes, and the things, and we get there and we cook this stuff, and there's a bonfire, you know, the whole thing. It's very nice. So we will get together, and I ran into my dentist. It was his first year there, and he said, "Wow, this is a great place." And I said, "Yeah, I've been coming here for like 4 or 5 years, every year." I said, "It's fantastic." He said, "You know, my son Jack is here. He's over there with his friends, and he absolutely loves Sirius Black. He says he's obsessed with Sirius Black in Harry Potter. Would you go over and surprise him and say hello? He will be thrilled. So I approach these kids who are sort of sitting there, and they've got their faces in these Game Boys like this. And I walk up to Jack, and I say, hello, Jack. And he kind of looks up like that, and I said, I'm Sirius Black. And a kid at the end looked up from his Game Boy and said, no, you're not. You're Commissioner Gordon. True story. So, yeah.
He's in for a reckoning when he gets a little bit older.
You know, a friend of mine actually, I stayed with many years ago. I was staying with someone in LA, and his kid was, I don't know, his kid was a little bit. It just had a lot of energy. It was a boy, you know. I mean, I know they want to give you medication, but he was a boy, and he was probably a bit bored. And he mentioned that Lee Harvey Oswald was living with him. And so they called the parents in. I think he's here. They called him into the headmaster's office. You know, and they said, we really want to talk about, you know, your son. And it's troubling that he says that Lee Harvey Oswald is living at the house with you. And my friend said, yeah, he's right. He is.
Do you find that I mean, just you know, through the Batman films and the Potter films, I mean, you're being introduced to, I mean, an entirely new generation of fans and fans who, you know, have not quite yet, you know, been exposed to you know, the other roles that you've played.
No, it's wonderful though. I mean, my fan base went from 40 to 4. You know, and they are the real. When you meet the Potter fans, oh my God, I mean, they're fabulous. Yeah.
Do you meet them though at 11, and then, you know, a few years later, the 15, 16, and by now they've seen a couple more of your movies, and they say, you know, you're not the same guy I thought you were.
You're not quite as nice as we thought you were. Yeah, but it's very. I've been really honest, extremely lucky, and to be in a franchise with the pedigree of you know, of Potter is just to get that in a career, you know, but to have that and Batman is you know, we've retired. It's the third one, and it's the end. I mean, for Chris, I think, and we retired on the last night. You know, I said, well, this is it, you know. And I got back to my trailer, and they had made me a shadow box. And it was Gordon's badge, his glasses, and underneath a mustache. And it was lovely and sad, kind of at the same time. But I think it must be a first that a mustache has ever been retired. Yeah.
When you put your imprints in at Grauman's Chinese Theater, you know, you put your hands and your feet and put your mustache in the cement.
Yeah. Well, hopefully it will be in my hand. Yeah.
So let's talk about Tinker, Tailor, Soldier, Spy. I hope you don't mind being reminded of this, but you and Colin were tipped very early on in your careers. There's a sort of classic cover story in the Face magazine, the Brit Pack.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. Is that the first time that you've actually worked with him since you guys sort of, you know, were...
Well, we crossed paths on the Christmas Carol.
Right. Oh, right.
Very, very
the Disney
sort of
Christmas
briefly.
Carol movie.
I mean, when I met Colin, he was covered in ping pong balls and had all those dots on his face.
Right.
Yeah. So it's really, really the first time that I've encountered him.
Right. I mean, do you have moments on a project like this where you can sort of, you know, look at each other and take stock and feel like, you know, we've really, you know, we've made it, or do you not allow yourself to think like that?
Well, I think we felt that we were all fortunate to be in that room at that level of one's game, you know, and be in the room with each other. We admired each other's work. So you are sitting there with these, you know, I mean, I'm there at that table. I've got Kieran Hines next to me. I'm looking at Colin Firth. There's Toby Jones.
Yeah.
And then there's John Hurt at the head of the table. It's pretty special.
Yeah.
You know, you feel very sort of, you know, very privileged. And of course, the film is it's Cold War and austere, but we had some laughs. John is a great raconteur, great storyteller, and Colin has he's got a naughty look in his eye. Colin got a bit of a twinkle.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I imagine it's inevitable you'll get asked this in the course of promoting a film like this. But you know, does the original BBC adaptation and Sir Alec Guinness's performance, I mean, does that loom in your mind when you go into something like this?
Oh yeah, it's terrifying. I mean, I was offered. It was one of the rare occasions where I was offered a role outright. You know, Thomas wanted me, and that's rare. And then even rarer to be offered Smiley in well, it's not even a remake. It's an original in a motion picture.
Yeah.
You know, Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. But I didn't. You know, in theory, on paper, that's a yes, like that.
Right.
Yeah, I'll do it. I'm there. And it wasn't for me because the ghost of Guinness was so loom large, and I remember the original series,
Yeah.
and he was a part of the establishment. He was such a much beloved actor. I certainly admired him and had seen the work, you know, all those Ealing comedies,
Yeah.
great work he did, and he was the face of Smiley, considered by many,
Yeah.
You know, to be the definitive portrayal of this character, of this very iconic character in this book. So that's very scary.
Right. How do you get around that? How do you then?
You know what I did? I said I wouldn't do it. Then I called up and said to my manager, "You haven't called them yet, have you?" Because he knows me. We've worked together for 22 years. So he said, "No, I haven't called them yet." I said, "No, I think I will do it. I'm thinking I'm going to do it." And he goes, "Okay, I'll call them." And then about 4 hours later, I would call him and I go, "Have you called them yet?" And he said, "No." And I said, "You know what? I'm not feeling it." And he said, "All right, tomorrow morning I'll call them. I tell you you're not doing it." And then of course it came around, and eventually I just called him and said, "I'm insane. I have to do this." Now, if you're a classical actor and you're going to play a classical role, you're going to play Hamlet. You have all the Hamlets that have come before you that are heralded. You know, there's Gielgud and Richard Burton and Ian McKellen, and you know, and it's the same with Romeo or the same with King Lear. So I sort of played a trick with myself and thought it's a classic role, and this is a reinterpretation. It's open for interpretation. Guinness was very successful in it, and that's how I walked that fire.
Right.
You know, can I pull it off? Can I do it? You go through all of those. You know, you have all those insecurities. I mean, I do. I think it keeps you on your toes.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's complacent. Otherwise, it's satisfaction where you're sitting and thinking, "I'm wonderful." You know, that's death.
Yeah.
It's death to you.
Is it a professional hazard that I mean, you can get attached to a character, you know, even before the deal is struck? That sometimes you're already sort of seeing yourself playing.
Oh yeah, that's happened and then things haven't worked out. Yeah, that happened to me. That happened to me a year and a half ago, where I did 6 weeks on a character, and then the film never happened. Yeah, and you're it's sort of a stillbirth. It's like, what do I do with this guy?
Yeah.
It's an odd feeling. It's happened once or twice.
Well, on a happier note, I mean,
Yeah.
you've already gotten some fantastic, notices for this, and I don't want to jinx things, but I mean, I've heard some discussion of maybe even reprising the character in another
Yeah.
Smiley
Yeah,
story.
yeah, Smiley's people.
Right.
I would, I'm there. Yeah.
Is that? I mean, you've obviously, you've played Gordon a few times. You've played Sirius Black a couple of times, but that's sort of a new thing for you to get to actually play a character more than once.
Well, now my kids, I say, "What are you doing, Dad?" And I say, it's this script. It's from this book. It's called Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, and they say, "Do you die in it?"
That's the metric that they use. Does
Yeah.
Dad die or not?
Do you die in the end?
Right.
I said, "No, I live in this one,
Right.
son." Yeah. I love teasing kids. I love teasing the young kids, and I say, "You know what's on the other side of the veil?" Because Sirius Black goes through that veil, and he's gone. And I go, "I know what's on the other side of that veil." And these little 6-year-olds, they go, "What? I say, "Batman." Jim Gordon.
Right.
It's on the other side of it.
Is there any role, Gary, that you'd still like to play? I mean, it seems like you've literally played everyone at this point.
It feels like it. Is it? I can't, off the top of my head. I can't. I mean, I'm happy with the association of Smiley at the moment. So, I'll rest there for a while.
Can we have one more round of applause for the extraordinary Gary Oldman?